to our last speaker of the first day of NIS Audio before we move on to the online lab sessions. This is Ole Reisman, who is the managing editor at Der Spiegel, and who will explain how the publication has been experimenting with audio and voice, what has worked and what hasn't in this creation of new audio products. So welcome, Ole.
So I'm really going to show you in the next couple of minutes how we approach audio and voice, and I'm happy to take any questions. I'm aware that this session is going to be recorded and will be up on YouTube later, so let's see how much details I can reveal. But please get in contact and shoot me an email and let's talk behind the scenes. Maybe I can give you some more insights, some more figures and data that's not very publicly available right now. Okay, so this is German, of course. We are a publication in Germany. Sagen, was ist? It's a quote from our founder. It translates roughly to "Don't mince words, say what's happening." And today it's hear what's happening, hear what's going on. Because like we approach audio and voice. This is me. I live together with two machines in my kitchen, and I try to talk to them, and I want to make them talk back to me. Sometimes it's going well, sometimes not so much. As introduced, I'm managing editor at Spiegel. I'm in editorial development, and we do audio strategy. So this is what we're going to do today. Just a quick overview where we're standing right now, and then maybe a little bit outlook on what's next for us. For some semantics, this is audio. We do have podcasts, we do news updates, and we do audio stories. And I will go deeper in each one of these categories. And then there's voice, which we understand it's a means to access not only, but also audio content. How it all started, we started our first podcast 2017. It's a political podcast. It's on air, so to say, once a week. It's hosted by the two leading women of our audio department, and they do a mixture of go out on the street, do report, capture real voices, and then do more of a storytelling approach. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's an interesting show. It's a long-running show. And we do some audience surveys, and we know that the audience is somewhat slightly on the male side. It's age 35, which is very young for us. And 90% have an A-level education. And then an interesting figure, 87% listen till the end. So with podcast statistics, you never quite know. But if people listen to podcasts on our own platform or on a platform that has statistics available, and when we do user surveys, we can get an idea of who actually listens to our podcast, a pretty good idea actually. And then we do these surveys and go deeper and go into demographics. So this is how it all started. Today, we have a roster of 7 podcasts which are freely available. So you could say that there's like on any given day of the week, there's a new episode of a podcast, more or less. Some of these podcasts are organized in seasons. So after one season ends, there might be a couple of weeks before the next season starts. Sometimes it has to do with advertisement because these podcasts are freely available. They are paid by advertisements. We see them as an ever-expanding range of podcasts on a specific topics. So this is not all the Spiegel has to offer, but this is catered to a specific audience. Sometimes it's a little bit different what we do in each podcast. We have like Lobo, it's a podcast. He is a columnist, he has a weekly column. And when people of our community react to his column, he later on takes these comments and makes a podcast out of the comments and comments on the comments. So there's a community engagement situation happening. In other podcasts, we do see that really we reach a younger audience. So the podcasts we offer really are an important part of our strategy to reach a younger audience, not necessarily on our own platform, but also on platforms outside of our reach. So we do have a business publication, Manager Magazine, Harvard Business Manager. There are podcasts as well who live in our podcast ecosystem offering. And then there is the news briefing. We launched not quite a year ago. All you need to know in 3 minutes or less, updated very early in the morning. Our Australian news desk helps with that. Then updated 2 more times at noon and at night to really give you just the news without much hassle. And this is a product we launched specifically to aim for smart speakers and the smart home. I will go into details later. So a younger audience, we do see it's mostly an off-platform thing for us. Most of our podcasts and news briefings are not listened on our own platform, in our own app, but on external platforms. So that's interesting. Advertising works really well for us. We have very high production values. We don't do just people in a studio talking to each other. We try to have a premium experience to really stand out from the crowd. That means high production costs. But if we can secure advertising, it works out really well for us. And we have an attentive audience. As I mentioned, the listen through rates are off the charts, especially if you compare it to stats, how many minutes people spend with an article. So the audience is more engaged. This is great for us. Just a little aside here, in the first weeks and months of the Corona crisis, we switched one of our weekly podcasts to a not exactly daily, but like we ramped it up to 4 to 5 episodes each week to really help people live through the Corona crisis. So we didn't see numbers go down, but we did see numbers go up, especially for this one podcast, but also all our other offerings. We didn't see a nosedive in numbers and even not on advertisement, speaking of audio and podcast, which is helpful, to say the least. That was a free world. Then we have audio content exclusively for subscribers. One is our weekly podcast where our colleagues tell the biggest stories of the week. And then there's we recently did a podcast mini-series about the large situation with the airport in Berlin-Brandenburg, which we maybe we'll see an opening in the next couple of days or weeks. Let's see how that works out, which is totally over budget. And you know the story. We had a reporter had very detailed insight in all the inner mechanics of these fiasco. And we did a 6-part mini-series. And I will tell you about these exclusively for subscriber podcasts later. Just to make the picture complete, we do audio stories, which are the most important stories of any given week, read by professional speakers. So we experiment with text-to-speech. We have implemented it in beta versions. It works quite well, but in order to give a really premium experience with all the names, with all the places, so text-to-speech might be an option to have like every piece of content in an audio format, but in audio stories, we're looking for a more premium product. And this is really, we use people from the radio scene who are really experienced in reading texts to have a good experience. Okay, behind the scenes, we have a web player, HTML5. Some of you might know that especially Apple changed how HTML5 audio and video works. So we had to build a native audio player for our apps so that people actually could listen to our podcasts, and not that the telephone shuts the podcast, the audio feed down after a couple of seconds. That works now, which is very good. We have it in Player, and in the back end, we started ours back in the days with SoundCloud, switched to Omni Studio recently. Very happy about that. Okay, so the news briefing, just quickly. We had an Alexa flash briefing skill, which was a robotic voice telling just the headlines. That was not a good experience. So we started we hired people to do the news in a real way. 3 minutes, as I said, and we see here on weekdays, it's the uptick, and then on the weekends, we see the numbers go down. This was where it started. We see the numbers go up, go up, go up. And nowadays, nearly 1 year later, we see over these 3 episodes on any day combined about 50,000 plays on weekdays, which is very good for us. It's monetized by advertisement. So after we give you the news in 3 minutes, after it, we have an advertising segment. When we started out, we really thought this could get traction on Alexa devices and on Google Home devices. But then Spotify came and did Your Daily Drive, a playlist specifically catered to people who are commuting, who want to listen to music mixed in with news segments. We didn't know it before. It just happened that when we launched our update, Spotify launched Your Daily Drive. And this shows in the numbers. The moment Spotify launched Daily Drive, our numbers went up significantly. There was a small period where we can see in the data that in the Daily Drive playlists, we were a little bit more down in the ranking of Spotify, but that it returned after a while. Then we had some analytics stuff going on, but overall we see the numbers go up. And in the end, here's a chart which shows you the distribution. Where do people listen to the news update? It's on our own platform. It's on Spiegel. We see Spotify, roughly 1/3 of our listeners are through Spotify. And then we have Alexa News and Flash Briefing. That's the smart speakers. Could be higher, especially if you know that at least in Germany, people say that 11 million people are using smart speakers. As Nick in the morning told us, most people use it for music. But then again, news is an important feature of these devices. Some of these devices will help you get the news. And if you ask Alexa or if you ask Google Home, get me the news from Spiegel, we will have something to offer. Okay, then exclusives. As you might have noticed, there is the logo of Amazon Audible on top of the podcast cover. That is because we have a very fortunate and good partnership with Audible, where Audible is very interested in getting the Spiegel brand onto its own platform and have the Audible subscribers listen to Spiegel content. So we produce with them together a weekly podcast with important stories told by our reporters. And this has been going on for quite some time, and it's really successful. And we have it as a not only on Audible platform, but if you're a subscriber of Spiegel, and you can get this podcast in addition to your subscription for free if you're a Spiegel subscriber. So when we look at these partnerships, we really think this benefits both. So we have an additional podcast exclusively for our subscribers, where they are happy, retention, it's better, churn rate goes down. And on the other hand, Audible is happy, helps us produce this amazing podcast. and their customers are happy. So there's a win-win situation here. And we started out with a weekly podcast. And when we did Made in Germany about the airport disaster, the 6-episode mini-series, again, with Audible. So it's on Audible. They did advertisement in all of Germany, put out posters and stuff. And again, if you're a subscriber of Spiegel, then you get this podcast mini-series on top of your subscription for free. So this is really great for us. And we are looking into these partnership and want to likely expand on what we're doing so far, because it benefits us both. So what's next? If you've listened to Nick Newman's presentation this morning, you might guess where our portfolio falls short at the moment. That's about all I can say. And we are hiring. So we have some things in mind, and we really look for reporters, editors, engineers to expand our audio universe and to double down on audio. And the last couple of minutes, I've looked at my presentation at the screen. Let's see if I can go back and if there are any questions. I'm happy to go deeper into details. Please shoot. If I can tell you anything that's more interesting for you, please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Ole. How are you?
Hi. Good.
Good. So yes, you have some questions here. You have one here from Joaquin Fernandez. Joaquin asks, hello, I'm Joaquin Fernandez, multimedia editor from La Diaria. How is the relation of listeners of free content versus the listeners of content only for subscribers? Thank you.
So much more people listen to the free podcasts. Much more. It's just the way it works. So that's why we look at our free podcasts. They play an important role in attracting a younger audience, and we see it as a top of the funnel means when we can get into a relationship with listeners who really invest time, listen to our reporters. That's a great opportunity for us to show them what Spiegel is capable of, what we are doing, how Spiegel is working, and we can point them in the direction of our website or other podcasts or our paid offerings. So for us, for once, it works really well through advertising. So this is good. So we are not wasting money. And on the other hand, we are attracting a younger audience and can show them what Spiegel stands for. So this is really great for us. And then if you are a subscriber, you get podcasts on top of your subscription. People use it, but this is the mini series and the weekly podcast. The offering at the moment is smaller than the free offering. So in terms of engagement and listen minutes, the free podcasts are more. The audience is bigger at the moment.
We have another question from Cole Mongain. He asks, how many people in total, journalists, producers, sound designers, are needed for the short update podcast? And how many people has the Spiegel working exclusively on audio?
So the brief news update, we know that there are publishers out there who start really small and grew from there, like one person sitting in the newsroom and talking into the mobile, doing WhatsApp news briefs. We decided against such an approach. We hired one person specifically for the news update, and she is the one most likely to be on air at the show at noon and at night. But then there are other people in the newsroom who are involved at the production. So if she writes the news, we do have the news desk who goes over copy, who goes over facts. And then as one person can't possibly do the news briefing at 4 o'clock in the morning to prepare for the 6 o'clock show, and at 10 o'clock for the noon show, and in the afternoon for the late show, we have a news desk in Australia in a different time zone, and our colleagues in Australia are helping us with the morning edition. But then again, there are a couple more people who help with copy editing. So, and then there's holidays, and if someone gets sick leave. So in the end, it's hard to pin it down, but I would say it's about 2.5 people, I would say. And like advertisement, sometimes it works really well, but we have seen weeks go by where we didn't have advertisements in our news briefing.
Okay.
So again, and overall, was there a question like overall how many people work in audio?
Yes.
No. Yes. Even harder to answer, to be honest. So we have a dedicated audio team, and some of these people have their own podcasts, which they do, like the before mentioned Stimmenfang, our politics podcast, then Smarter Living, our self-help, do-it-yourself podcast. These are people who work in our audio department. But then we have other podcasts where the audio department helps with, first of all, with strategy and come up with a format, and then with later on with editing and engineering. But the people who are presenting a podcast working in different departments. So we started a foreign policy podcast, and the colleague who's doing that, he works for our foreign desk. And now we have to see when we expand our podcast portfolio that we go to the desks and are like, oh, could someone from your department would be great if he would do a weekly podcast. And as you all know, a weekly podcast can very well mean that one person, I mean, how much else can you do if your ambition is to produce a really good podcast that gets tens and tens of thousands of subscribers, which is monetized by advertisement, and stands out because, as Nick told us before, the competition is growing, and each and any publisher is doubling down on audio right now, and it depends on the market. But in Germany, we have a strong public broadcasting sector with highly regarded shows. They are doing podcasts as well. So in order for us to produce a podcast, we just can't do it with less resources and just get someone a mic and let's figure out where we go. That was possible in 2017. Nowadays, the stakes are much higher, and we really need more resources to produce podcasts than 4 years ago.
And just, I mean, last question before you continue. We have one from Elizabeth. She asks, may I ask what is meant by apps like other? How many are there? And she says, referring to the distribution slide.
Yeah. So distribution is a hassle. We have people in product management who try to pull in all the figures and numbers from all the different platforms which are out there. And at the moment, I mean, the market is evolving in Germany. Audible going into podcasts, Spotify going into podcasts, and there are some slightly smaller players who try to go into podcasts. We have Podimo, for example. And then there's apps from large publishers and even from television and media companies who try to mimic the Spotify approach. One large private television network has launched its own app. So there's a couple of apps nowadays who try to give you a a large podcast experience and stack exclusive podcasts on top. Some media companies have access to VIPs, so they do podcasts with VIPs, sometimes from television, sometimes from football and soccer, and try to reach a bigger audience. So to broaden the audience of podcasting. And that is the moment we are in right now. Before that, in the last couple of years, it was more of a niche theme. Then more and more people realized the growth, the opportunities for growth in Germany. And now there are so many podcasts. Sometimes you wonder who should listen to all these podcasts. But at the moment, numbers are going up, and the competition, we fear the competition, but so far our shows are highly regarded. The quality really is important, and we're good there. So other apps could mean any of the new emerging platforms that are out there. Some of them ask us, can we include your podcast in our app? And well, we give you access to statistics, sometimes even demographics. But then again, you're ending up with you release your podcast into the wild, and to gather the information, how many people are actually listening, for how long, who are these people, as you all know, that's really, really hard to do. So the category is certainly growing.
We have another question, Ole, from Eli.
Sure.
Have you ever considered doing English audio products to reach listeners from other European countries? And well, you said that you have people in Australia, so I think it's a good question.
To be honest, no.
Okay.
To be honest, no. So because so we have an international website where we translate some of our articles into English, some of our major scoops, topics that are of interest for the English-speaking world, for Europe. A couple of weeks ago, we did an interview with Navalny. We translated it into Russian. We translated it into English. But for us to do English podcasts, it's interesting and it's tempting. But if it's a free podcast, we really want to sell the advertisements ourselves. And we can do that if we have a very clear picture of our audience in a very specific market. But when we would have an English podcast, and then it's like 10% listeners from the UK, 5% from France, 11% from Spain, that makes the advertising very hard to realize. So I'm sure people are looking into that. My hope would be that people will find solutions that are satisfying for us. But at the moment, we don't plan to go into English. As I said, we have other plans. The German market, that much is happening in the German market, and our portfolio is not quite there where we want it to be.
Okay, so we have one question more from Pauline's podcast. She asks, how did the corona crisis affect your amount of advertising at Der Spiegel? Did it decline significantly?
So that depends if you're talking audio or if you're talking Spiegel. Because if you're talking Spiegel, it's no secret that all of publishing in Germany took a hard hit in the first month of the corona crisis. That affected Spiegel as well. And the world looks, in terms of advertising, a little bit better now, even if there is a second surge. But in terms of audio, so we didn't see our audience numbers go down. And in terms of advertising, I'm pretty sure you could, if you take a step back and look at the whole year, that you could determine that there will be an impact of corona. on our advertising in audio. But to my knowledge, so far, podcasts didn't suffer as much as display advertisements have suffered, which was significant.
She just wrote in the chat that she was referring to audio.
Yeah. No, not to my knowledge. I have to check back with colleagues, but my understanding of the matter is that our shows had advertising in it. No people pulled advertisement, and so that worked really well. And then again, sometimes we do pause a podcast if there are no advertisers, if it's a free podcast. And to the contrary, the interest in, Spiegel has podcasts, we want to advertise in podcasts, was at such a level that I think at the moment, we have all these 7 podcasts are up and running or will be up and running soon because we have advertisement. And we even will this Friday, watch out, this Friday on all the platforms and channels, we will launch an 8th podcast because the demand is there. The interest from the audience is definitely there. And if that matches up with interest from advertisers, the better. And so in this dark and grim year in terms of news and in terms of the news are dark, but interest in news is high. But in terms of advertisement, podcasts are really the silver lining.
And well, as you mentioned before, we have a request from Elizabeth. Since you mentioned that you're looking for reporters, would be the best way to apply to find specific posts on your platform?
So there's our company website. It's called spiegelgruppe.de, spiegelgruppe.de. You can Google it. And there are the placements.
Okay, thank you so much.
If not, shoot me an email or look at my Twitter. I have retweeted it, and so yeah. And please get in contact, and I will send you a link. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Ole, for your time, for your great presentation, for answering so many questions, and yeah, hope to see you soon.